Hello student, today we are going to read about the Age of Milton. Other poets and prose writers. The Caroline poet. As I have already pointed out, the Age of Milton and the Age of Dryden, though in a broad way we are bound to distinguish between them, really overlap, and as a result it is extremely difficult in grouping the writers of the period between 1625 and 1700 under one or the other head to establish any quite satisfactory order among them. We will here, however, for the present confine our attention to those who, irrespective of date, seem by the quality of their thoughts and style to belong to the older generation. Those who, while really contemporary with them, belong rather to the new generation, for any reason may most conveniently be connected with it, will be dealt with in our next two chapters. Under the term Caroline poets, we include a number of verse writers whose work may in the bulk be roughly assigned to the reign of Charles I, though as a matter of fact many of them continued to produce through the years of the Commonwealth or even later. Some of them were secular, some religious poets. The most important of them, Robert Herrick, wrote a both secular and religious poetry with quality, facility, if not quite with equal success. In early life an associate of Ben Jonson, Herrick went into the church, found himself in the banishment of his Devonshire parsonage, as unhappy as Spencer had been in Ireland, was deprived of his living after the Civil War and reinstated at the Restoration. His religious poetry was published under the general title Noble Numbers. His secular in the same volume 1648 under date of Hesperides. It is in the latter that Henry's powers are shown at their best. They are miscellaneous in character, comprising address to friend, fairy poem, occasional poem on all short of subjects, and many love poems, but they are all delightful in their naturalness and spontaneity, their exquisite fancy, and their lyrical charm and grace. Historically, perhaps their most singular feature in their complete detachment from the political interest of the hour. In the season of tumult and confusion, when the mind of the man were stirred by the fiercest passions, Henrik held himself altogether aloof, preferring to sing of the joys of life with the tender sense all the same of their brevity. In the Cavalier group of Caroline poets, whose inspiration was almost entirely secular, the principal names are of Thomas Carlyle, his friend Sir John Suckling, and Richard Levelands. These are all poets in the lighter vein and made no pretense at treating their art seriously, but what they did extremely well. Carlyle, he that loves a rosy cheek; Suckling, who so thin and pale, a fond lover; and Levelands to Althea from prison, may be cited as examples of the fine lyrical quality by which at its best their amatory verse is marked. With these we may here join Andrew Marvell, because his earlier work exhibits many of the characteristics of the Cavalier school, but in politics and religion he was on the other side. And after the Restoration, he changed his poetic note and wrote fierce satire in rugged style on Charles II and his supporters. Of the Caroline poets who found their main interest in religion, the most widely known, though not poetically the greatest, was George Herbert, whose collection of lyrics entitled The Temple Breath, The Spirit of the Purest Piety, the Sacred Verse of Richard Crashaw, though very unequal and at times quite ruined by conceits as for greater fire and passion. That of Henry Vaughan, while directly and powerfully influenced by Herbert, is deeper in thought and much more mystical. The religious emblems of Francis Quarles, the text of which was illustrated by quaint engravings, must be placed on record because of their immense and long enduring popularity. Cowley and the metaphysical poets. Abraham Cowley demands a little more attention both because he was in his own day considered the greatest of English poets and because he is usually regarded as the chief representative of that metaphysical school which, as we have seen, took its rise in the work of Donne. The name metaphysical was first applied to this school by Johnson, and though it is not a very good one, it has kept its place in our critical vocabulary. Johnson's explanation of his term is, however, excellent. The metaphysical poets, he writes, were men of learning, and so their learning was their whole endeavor. They neither copied nature nor life. Their thoughts are often new, but seldom natural. They are not obvious, but neither are they just. And the reader, far from wondering that he missed them, wonders more frequently by what perverseness of industry they were have ever found. The silent feature of this curious group of writers are here clearly indicated. Their work is packed with affections and conceits in their effort to surprise by the boldness and novelty of their image they indulge. In strained metaphors, far-fetched similes, and most extravagant hyperbole. They cultivate ingenuity at any cost, substitute philosophical subtleties and logical hair splitting for natural expression of feeling, and employ their vast art of the way learning without the slightest regard to propriety. As a result, they are in general violent, harsh, cold, and obscure. That from time to time they nonetheless give us passages or even whole poems of real powers and beauty only proves that the promptings of genius were not altogether stifled by vicious theories. But when we found a poet of the quality of Crashaw ransacking earth and heaven for emblems of the eye of sorrowing Mary Magdalene and describing them, for example, two walking baths, two weeping emotion, portable and compendious ocean, we can realize into what frantic absurdities English poetry was for a time misled. Johnson puts it, by a voluntary deviation from nature in pursuit of something new and strange. In Cowley's work we have the last important production of this metaphysical school, but we must remember that its influence were very widely spread among the poets of the age in general. Thus the three chief religious poets who have been named above, Crashaw, Herbert and Vaughan, were all more or less metaphysical. It should also be noted that in his later poetry Cowley discards much of his former extravagance and approximates to the restraint and sober style which came in with the next generation. The Caroline prose writer. In the prose literature of Milton's age, there are many names of importance, but it is only of the man whose interest is broad enough to justify their inclusion in a record of general literature that we have here to take account. Thus, the holy living and holy dying of the eloquent divine Jeremy Taylor and the saints everlasting rest of the Puritan Richard Baxter, though purely religious in matter and aim, deserve reference as a acknowledged classic of their kind. Another divine, the quaint, witty, and vivacious Thomas Fuller, though he also wrote much on religious subjects, is best remembered today for his delightful miscellaneous works of England. Sir Thomas Browne, a physician, was the author of a number of books full of varied and curious erudition, but his main title of fame is his personal confession of religious faith, Religio Medici, that a highly special subject may be sheer charms of treatment be endured with the widest possible interest in strikingly shown in the case of the complete angler or the contemplative man's recreation by Isaac Walton, which though ostensibly designed for the instruction of fishermen, has long been popular with countless readers who care nothing for the sport and on account of its pleasant gossipy style and genuine rustic flavor. Walton also wrote some admirable biographies in history in which much good work was now done. The first place is occupied by History of the Great Rebellion by Edward Head, Earl of Clarendon, which, while untrustworthy by reason of its royalist bias, is justly admired for its stately diction of its skillful studies of character. The Leviathan of Thomas Hobbes, advocating strong central government apart from its theories which do not now concern us, must be mentioned as the most important of the political treatises which were inspired by the unrest and speculation of the time. Speaking of the work of all men in general and disregarding for the moment of their individual qualities, we may say that we now here recognize in their style the characteristic tone and manner of our modern prose. What has been said about the prose of Milton is equally applicable to that of his contemporaries. Even in the greater colloquialism of Baxter, there is still much to remind us that this is not the sort of prose we use today. We must therefore be careful to note the particular historical interest of the charming essay of Colley, the manner of which has a great deal in common with that simpler and clear way of writing which the Age of Dryden, as we shall presently see, what to introduce. This is all about the Milton's prose and poetry. Now we will read about the dragon in the next video. Hope you all like it, and so please like, subscribe and share. Thank you for watching.